Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Noble Manhattan's Adolescent and Child Coaching Support Group. This is actually the first one of 2025 because January sort of crept up on us rather fast, and we didn't manage to get one in. So anyway, I thought today we would look at exam technique, not exam technique so much as preparation for exams, because there's a huge area of concern, of stress, of general worry about exams, whether it be school exams or other exams. They normally tend to be in the sort of early summer months, and so now is a good time for students to start preparing mentally. Hopefully, they've already started preparing both the content and technique required to do the exams. I'm very open to people butting in and saying their bit because I don't want just to speak for the next 30 minutes and feel that I'm actually speaking to a blank wall. So if you do have anything to say, please raise your hand, and I would be delighted if you could add. Well, already started really by saying, well, why do so many pupils actually fear exams? It seems to be one of those things. I mean, we've all been through exam stress in our time, I expect. And are things any different to when we did our exams? I mean, when I did my A-levels, it was 50 years ago, I hate to say. But have things really changed? Or is it just the same old, and actually we need to ensure that those with whom we are in charge, or for whom we are in charge, can do as well as they can. Thank you, Claire. Not really, that is the problem. Yes, I believe you are right, but then that is my take on it. Okay, so why do so many people fear exams? Just give it some thought a minute and just sort of come up with some headings. And I know you're always a very good contributor to these sort of things, so
I don't know how to raise the hand.
I'm going to call on you.
Okay. Now, in terms of preparing for exams, we must understand that the student needs, or the learner needs, to know the syllabus and go through the syllabus very well of whatever is to be examined upon. And then, for example, if it is a high school student, we need to encourage peer education, child-to-child centered learning. We are talking of this, of encouraging positive discussion groups. For example, if you take geography together and one is performing very well while others do not perform very well, then you need to encourage, as a coach, you need to encourage as a teacher, such a student to identify with that one who excels so that he can try to improve in his performance. And also looking at the performance of one who does not do so well in class, associating also will make the student not to repeat the mistakes the one who does not perform so well may have undertaken. Let us also remember in coaching that some exams are through presentations. Not all exams you are going to sit and write or type whatever you are being examined upon. So we need to encourage peer education. We need to encourage the student to have summary notes, or the adult learner to have summary notes, so that can quickly remind a person who is going to be examined that these are the key points I need to remember in this topic and subtopic. Also, how to choose questions is very cool. Some questions are 12. You choose any 4 and do your exam, depending on how the examination has been set. So, depending on how you choose your questions, you may be looking at those questions where you will excel. That is where you actually have the plus in the way you've been doing your revision. So in our coaching, we also need to guide the student or the person being coached to reach a certain level of understanding that choosing questions, for example, if one question has 20 marks and another one is segmented into part one, part two, part three, part four, each has 5 marks. That one which is segmented, it's possible for the student to get everything. And this one, which is prose or essay type, you need to help in our coaching the student to underline different parts being asked so that they get to realize the overall mark. Different countries have their own different systems of examining. Thank you.
And thank you very much indeed. I think you've hit on two of what I would determine as 3 points of examination preparation. One is the content, one is the technique, and the third one I'm going to put down as the mindset, the readiness to do it. And I was intrigued that you brought in peer, basically peer-to-peer work here, because very often it can be, as far as I am aware, that those who feel under the most pressure are those who are perhaps lacking lacking the most in self-esteem. So it's therefore they sort of clam up. Claire, thank you very much indeed for your comments. Do you want to sort of add anything verbally?
Well, I was just really answering the question that you asked
Mhm.
about why people fear exams. And I think because one of the things I coach young people around, well, and their parents actually, is that learning is for life, and that, this particular GCSE, is not necessarily the be all and end all of everything, and that you can change careers, you can retrain, you can do online learning, you can do university at any age. There's so much pressure for 14 and 15-year-olds. They feel under so much pressure, and the schools put them under so much pressure, for their league tables to get the A, and you must work hard for it. And it doesn't have to be like that. You can stagger when you take exams. You can do exams from home. You can do things that you're interested in, outside the curriculum. And sometimes we just need to look at that wider picture, I think, because that can alleviate some of that fear. I think the fear comes from this performance mentality, like that they need to perform in exams, they need to perform for their exam. And a lot of it, of course, is based on rote learning, which unfortunately, with the way that we are in society now compared to where we were 50 years ago, Ian, when you were doing your GCSEs, you probably didn't have as many distractions. You probably were able to concentrate for longer. You were probably better at reading books and writing notes, right? Because that was how you learn, and that was what you had to do. Whereas now that's not how children learn. It's not what they have to do. And then they suddenly go into the exam room where they're in this Victorian desk facing the front with no one around them, nothing on the walls. Some of them can't write. Have you seen some of these teenagers writing? I've seen writing of 14, 15-year-olds that looks like the writing of an 8-year-old, right? And, we're not used to doing this old-fashioned, for want of a better word, learning. We're giving them tools in the classroom. Dyslexic learners have speech to text tools, or phones that can, things that you can do that can read the words for you. So there's all these ways of supporting neurodiverse learners in the classroom, and then the exams are just like lagging behind. It really pisses me off.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you for being so blunt. You know, it's some very good points there. Is the examination system so outdated?
What are we testing?
Well, quite. What pressures are they under? Um, you know, what about parental pressures of saying, "Oh, you've got to do this because." if you don't do this, you don't get up to the next stage, and so on and so forth. Especially with parents who really want the best for their children, but think that that is by applying pressure for them to succeed in exams. Your idea
Well,
of
unfortunately, it is though, isn't it?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's at the moment how our society perceives success, which is again outdated.
Well, it is one of the ways that the society perceives success, and they're absolutely right. But there are people who can do exams. There are people who have difficulty doing exams. As you've mentioned, it doesn't have to be just neurodiversity. It can be various other pressures, school pressures. I'm going to try and stay off my soapbox here, but are, you know, is education actually an acronym, sorry, a synonym of academe? Have we actually lost something within the education system because it's so academically bent, or it is sort of biased towards academics? How many teachers put the stress on their pupils because their own professional ability will be measured by the results of their classes?
Well, especially when, I mean, a few years ago before I left, it was performance-related pay.
Mm.
You have to prove, everybody loves the data, you have to prove that you've got your students up by 2 sub-levels in order to have enough money to have a bit more salary to feed your family. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting.
So, yeah, and that's just the United Kingdom. Hannah, are you coming in with a point there?
Un webinaire sur comment supporter les enfants qui doivent passer Je sais pas trop ce que... J'ai vu ce que au dernier moment, donc je viens de me connecter, je sais pas trop ce que c'est.
Okay. Forgive me, my French is not very good.
Si vous parlez plus.
Moi, je le comprends.
Alors,
Just as well then, probably, Cedric. No. So there are plenty of reasons why the pressure is on children, and I don't think the United Kingdom is much different to most other countries. I know we've got people from different countries here today, so if there is any difference within the countries of how their students take exams, then we would love to hear about them.
Yes.
Anne.
Yeah, in the country where I come from, that is Kenya in East Africa, we don't have what we can call teacher-student-centered learning. A teacher in school has so many students he or she is teaching. And if you put performance first, then she may never finish the syllabus. We must accept that also students, some are slow learners and others are ahead. So it's up to the parent to look for extra help, to take the initiative and get someone who has taken education to teach that particular subject privately to the daughter or the son. Else, if you just live for the school, a teacher, because of the resources we have, has as many as 40 to 60 students in a class. And that teacher may not be teaching only one subject, it may be more than one subject. So during examination, he is only interested in the fact that he, as a teacher, finished the syllabus, and it's up to the students to make it or not. We have what we call compulsory education, free education for primary school. So the enrollment, the person who is in charge of the school, like the principal or headmistress, cannot send away a student in primary school because the school, they don't have capacity. You keep on admitting, and it's up to the government to look for a desk for that particular student. So in such a scenario, Some would have been very students don't perform to expectations simply because the classroom, there were too many and the teacher was hurrying to finish with the syllabus and missed out on helping otherwise weak students. So in such a case, the parent or guardian has to take the initiative to help the student have good revision where they didn't learn well in school, and also where the student is weak. That coaching will assist the weaker student to get to understand better.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So how can we help the students? Now, I'm just going to concentrate really on the mindset rather than the content, rather than the technique, because I look to that. I look to schools to be able to do that, and to tutors to be able to do that. As Anne, you have just pointed out, those who can help more on the one-to-one side, and identify what we as supporters can do to help our children. Now, I'm saying we because my son is shortly to embark on his final school exams, and is, as usual, taken on too much of other things as well. So it's a case really of helping him to get his mind around why he's not so much why he's doing the exams, because he's actually got motivation, but it's about others as well, as to how can we help them to do their best when it comes to exams. Now, I'm going to start on this one by saying, I've already mentioned it, motivation. How can we motivate some of these kids? Because at the moment, all they've got is the exams approaching, and they can't see further than that. Claire, do you have any students in this sort of situation, or Simbo?
Yeah.
I have some
do.
thoughts about that.
Can we go to Simbo first, and then we'll go to Claire?
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of situations, varied circumstances that could affect their performance. I think support from parents can vary a lot, as we know. For example, some low income earning parents may be time challenged because they're probably working so many hours that when they come home, they're not able to do it, or have don't prioritize it. So the child is left on their own, and they may not be financially resourced enough to be able to support them with extra tuition. I'm working with I'm supporting a lady who has a local after-school club. And some of the children come from various backgrounds, some refugees, some quite varied. So the ability to understand, concentrate, their economic issues, their cultural issues, their esteem issues. So there's quite a lot of things in the bag for one to try and pick to. We can't generalize. I think it's difficult to generalize. So it has to be person-centered to a child. One needs to know that child, their circumstances, and to be able to have, quote unquote, a tailor-made approach to supporting them. Yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Claire?
Yeah, I'm putting a list. I'm putting a list of things in the chat box, but for me, some of the things are practical tips which can really make a difference. So I've got some ideas there in the chat box for everybody, but I think, diary management is important. I work with lots of students who are feeling very overwhelmed that they don't have time to do things. And so it's about having that conversation about, well, everybody has time to do things. It's about prioritizing the things that you have to do, not just the things that you want to do. So I found that that's been a very helpful conversation to have with young people, and then to actually go through with them and to put into their diaries you know, all the stuff that they have to do, the clubs and the things like that that they have to do, and then the sports and all of that, and then actually think, well, how much time do you really have to revise properly? And then we also look at things like their ultradian rhythm to look at, well, when is the best time to revise out of the time you have? Because there's no point sitting down to revise just because you've got that free block if actually your brain and your body aren't naturally engaged in learning. So if you can match up the free time available with the time that the student is going to be more on form, then they've got a better chance of actually using the techniques to make the information stick. So that would be my first sort of point. And then the one around mindset, I think it's about, you know, just doing their doing their best, knowing that they need to do well. Some students don't need to. Some students get A stars and 9s with doing very little revision at all, actually.
Which
But
I was one of them.
yeah, well, I've actually coached one of those students because she was depressed because she found it all so easy and she thought that there was something the matter with her. So they're not necessarily happy just because they're getting that anyway. But yes, it's about understanding, you know, why they need to get the grades, focus on the ones that are going to be the needle movers for the next step, you know. And so I look at that kind of like, what is enough to get you where you need to go? You don't necessarily have to get 9s and A stars in everything.
Great, thanks. You've just hit on one of the things that I think is sadly missing in so many students, to me, and that is having a goal, having a reason for why they're actually sitting the exams, because the sitting of the exams is but a step towards their ultimate goal. And one of the things that I ask them is, so, well, where do you want to be in your late 20s? And that tends to bring them up all standing because they're actually trying to work out what they're going to do tomorrow. But then that is the teenage brain.
Yeah.
And I think to a certain extent, if we can think about what they're going to do in the late 20s. And I'd like to come back to something you said earlier about it doesn't really matter about getting the results you might like to have now, because you can do exams at a later date. I look at that as a sort of a safety net, working on the principle that if you know you've got a safety net, you're not going to need it, because you can concentrate on the job in hand. So a trapeze artist, if they haven't got a safety net, will subconsciously be thinking, what if it doesn't work? If they've got a safety net, they've already thought that one through. And if the trick doesn't work, they're going to end up in the safety net. Okay, so the trick didn't work, but at least they can go and try again. And so therefore they don't have to worry about what if it doesn't work. So therefore they can concentrate much more fully on the job in hand. And that can take away a load of stress. Another technique that I use, your list is lovely.
Sorry, can I ask you something there?
Yes, Tina.
Sorry about that.
No, please do.
I just wondered, you know, with your safety net, you said, I didn't catch, what would that safety net be?
That safety net could be anything as basically a plan B. What if I don't get the grades that I need? And that could be, well, I can retake them next year.
Yeah.
Or I'm striving for A star, A B, but actually I'd be quite happy to go to a university that actually only wants 3 Cs. That is also a safety net, something that is well within the capabilities of saying, well, look, you know, I can strive for the top. If I don't make it, I've got another plan. But so many students don't have that second plan.
And actually, so many parents don't want to consider the second plan.
That is...
which is more of the problem.
Yes.
Which is a
With
huge,
all
great
due
big
respect to any parents here, including myself when I was in that space.
problem. And me.
Can can I share something related to this, which is
Certainly, Simbo.
my lived experience. I'll give an example. I failed maths, O levels.
Mm-hmm.
I as in F9, I failed it. And my son, for example, was predicted to have an A star in maths. So I then found myself repeating what my parents had told me, that, oh, you've got to get that mark. You know, you can't get that mark. But it so happened that I was training to be a teacher around that period. And because I failed my maths, I needed to get to take my maths GCSE around that time. And I was planning on taking my maths GCSE. And because I was teaching accountancy, my colleagues assumed that I was the numerate one. Amongst them, they needed somebody to teach maths. So they came to me to teach maths, somebody who failed maths, imposter syndrome. So I said, no, I can't teach maths. But they said, you're the only one who is numerate. We're all teaching English. So I had to then confront myself, went into my room and said, Simba, you're being a hypocrite. You're telling this young man to get A star, whilst in fact you failed it. Now, I then embraced teaching the learners who hated maths, or creative students, because they had to do maths, needed somebody to teach. They needed someone to teach them. So I was confronted with my limitations with myself, and trying to see how I could motivate these learners who just the word maths made them want to sleep.
And
So
there are a few of those around.
So I had to find a way to make it interesting for myself, because I was going to take the exam at the end of the year, and to work alongside them to teach, train, make sure that the information I was imparting was digestible and bite-sized for them. The good news is we all passed maths at the end of the year. But it takes a lot of introspection for teachers themselves to have lived experiences of failure on those experiences, to be able to now plan their lessons to make sure that their learners understand their learners, and ensure that it is used, the information that they're providing is digestible, bite-sized, and user-friendly for those learners, and carrying them along at their own pace.
I love the approach of finding somebody who is struggling with maths to teach it. Because as you have demonstrated, it helps the others to understand, because you're trying to put it in ways that you need to understand it, which may be the different way from a teacher. I'm going to be very cautious here. If we've got any maths teachers here, then please, this is not directed at you. I think there's a lot of maths teachers who are very good at maths, but not necessarily very good at teaching. And because of the way the brain works, they see maths as incredibly simple, and yet fail to understand that others don't see it in the same way. I have concerns about the maths syllabus to fit today's requirements, but that is another topic. So I think that that Simba, I love your approach. I think that was absolutely wonderful.
I guess because I was faced with my own limitations, so I had to find a way to make it interesting for them, and for me to also learn it. So
and by explaining it to other people probably helped you to do that.
It did. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Another trick that I use, Claire, you probably use it as well, looking at your list, is to, in a busy timetable, is actually to identify some time which you can actually, or the student can actually call their time.
So critically important.
So if a student is called Hannah, this is Hannah time. Mm-hmm. And this is perhaps time which is it could be while something else is going on. It could be during a train journey, a bus journey, the route to school or something like that, where their time, because it's Hannah time, they can do what they like.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's just looking out of the window, if that's just watching the world go by, if it's just listening to birds singing, if it's less listening to the wind in the trees,
Be
it
scrolling on
doesn't
TikTok,
matter.
Ian.
Say again?
Wouldn't be any of those things. It'd be scrolling on TikTok or
It'll be
Snapchat.
scrolling on TikTok. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's 20 minutes of scrolling on TikTok or Snapchat. Actually, I'll lift you on that, Claire, because a couple of my students found it was incredibly useful just to sit in the bus, gaze out of the window, time when they felt otherwise that they were guilty because they'd wasted their time, because it was their time and they could do what they like because it was named, they didn't have the guilt.
Really
And that was
important.
wonderful time for them just for their brain to go into neutral or go wherever it wanted to. And they found that incredibly useful. You know, a couple of 20-minute sessions in a day was quite invigorating.
Yeah, and really important as well for the parents as well when I've done this with the students, for me to coach the parents and say, look, this is their time. You cannot really go and then ask them to revise or do chores or to do whatever. Like, don't be surprised if there's kickback, because this is their time. This is their time to do whatever they want to do. Go on social media, draw, meditate, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's they're tidying their room if they want to, but not because they have to, right? Like whatever they
You've
want
hit a
to
nerve
do,
there.
whatever they want to do, it's their time. And so don't then fill their time with a job you're giving them to do. Let's put the job in at another time, right? So the job gets done, but they know they've got that spare time. And in fact, for us as adults, we need the same. We need to block in our own date with ourselves to just chill, right? That's super important so that we're not just going on this hamster wheel. So it's about setting good habits and modeling the behavior we want to see. If we're always on the go as a mum or a dad, and then we're frazzled and grumpy and not communicating well and all the rest of it, we need to ask ourselves why. What are we doing wrong? Are we not taking 20 minutes to just daydream in the day? And if we're not, why not, right? And then let's see, does that make a difference to ourselves? And if it does, then encourage our young people to do that too. So, yeah.
What other things do students need to put in place to achieve the best outcome that they can?
Well,
We've talked about goals. We've talked about time planning. We've talked about revision. We've talked about exam technique. What other things are going to help them to achieve the best that they can?
I included self-talk, affirmations.
Self-talk, self-affirmations. Yeah, absolutely.
Elaborate.
I'm going to include nutrition. Claire, you've already talked about sort of sport and activity. I'm going to include
I
nutrition.
put diet in there as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Forgive me, I didn't see it. But diet is one thing, but actually getting them into a routine of eating decently at decent times. I'm finding quite a challenge with my 17-year-old. I'm one of these people who I insist on breakfast because I believe in what it says. It is breaking your fast. You haven't eaten for 12 hours. It is time that you actually put some nutrition in your body, whether you want to or not, because by late morning, you will be feeling it. And interestingly, there was a study done a long time ago that the number of car accidents seemed to have a high spot around about 11 o'clock in the morning. And there was a significant number of people involved in those accidents who had not eaten breakfast. Because by that stage, you may have, your adrenaline may well be, you may well be running on adrenaline to start with, because you haven't eaten. But then everything runs out. So unless you act, and it doesn't matter what you have, as long as you have something, that you've got something to sort of keep you going throughout the morning. I think that's incredibly important. But eating late at night is not such a good idea. Having a good sleep routine or sleep preparation routine. Probably sleep preparation routine is even more important than having a sleep routine.
Definitely.
Thanks for those. Oh, SHED, sleep, hydration, exercise, diet. Love the acronym.
Easy to remember.
Yeah. And hydration, as you point out, Claire, is important. And I think that's one thing that's, if I go back to my time, we were never really taught about hydration. And so I'm perhaps one of the people who doesn't drink 2 liters of water a day. Mind you, I'm getting through the tea quite a lot at the moment. But it seems to be that actually that's one of the areas that the students today are actually not too bad at, provided they remember to take their water bottles with them.
Well, as long as they're allowed to drink them.
There's more to that, Claire?
Well, I know in primary schools, the children all come in with their water bottles and you put them in a lovely little container at the front of the class, and then you don't allow them to go and drink the water bottle, the water from the water bottles, because they'd be spilling it all over the paper and everything else. So, there are practical limitations perhaps in certain size classrooms and things. You don't want people up and down or, getting their water or spilling their water and things like that. So it's difficult, I think, for students to stay hydrated, even though they are more aware that they need to drink than we were. The practicalities of staying hydrated, and then also the fact that they then go for these sugary monster drinks and energy drinks and all of that as well.
Planned before tomorrow, yeah.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah, that's certainly one of those things, especially when people say, "Oh, you can only have water in it," but it's what they can put in the water. That even some schools even say, "No, you've got to have a clear water bottle." But you can, the kids can get around that one so easily, and do, and I don't think it helps. But I think one thing we didn't have at the time was the sort of the stresses of social media, and that was perhaps one of the things we could sort of stay focused for longer because we didn't have to keep looking at our phones and things like that. Hello, Reese. Good that you could join us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, to join.
So those who have just joined, we're talking about how we can prepare children, students, whether we're teachers, whether we're coaches, whether we're parents, students we support, how we can help them to prepare for forthcoming exams. So that's the key message here. So has anybody got any other sort of techniques that they can come up with to that they may have done themselves?
Yeah.
They may work with others to do that we can all learn from to help those that we support.
I think practice, a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm. And so that sort of comes under sort of exam technique, so they can learn from their any mistakes that they do make, or they can learn what goes right. I think we're so used to saying, do this and then learn from your mistakes. If we actually get to say, do this and what went well, so they can then go on.
I think also understanding the questions.
Yeah, reading it properly.
Properly, yes.
Yes, at least twice.
Yes.
How many students do we know who've rushed into the exam and say, "Oh, I recognize that question," written a 30-minute essay, only to realize at the end that the question was written slightly differently to the one that they chose, and they'd missed the point completely.
Oh, so many is eager to answer and then just, yeah.
Reese, what are your ideas then about supporting students?
So I would say practice like being under exam conditions. So you're used to that by the time the exam comes, because if you feel confident in doing it, because you would have done it more than once, you'll be used to that pressure, because it is pressure. You know, I can remember my exams. I had to have a scribe and a bit of extra time because I was a bit slower than the others to finish the exam, so I had a bit of extra time and a scribe. But the key sometimes is in the words of the question. So sometimes the answer is in the question. So for example, if it's describe, it's kind of describe something. If it's analyze, you have to say what something means and kind of explain what you're actually explaining. And then it goes with other keywords. So the keywords usually is the key to the answer, I feel sometimes.
So that's realistically, that's technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, I think perhaps some schools forget that technique is incredibly important.
Yeah.
They're concentrating so much on trying to complete the syllabus,
Yeah.
which you brought up, Anne, that they don't have time to explain that actually by developing the right technique for exams can give you as much as sort of 10, 15, even 20 marks different, maybe even more. But one of the things I found was that one of the schools that I worked with, all of a sudden, all my students were sort of bursting into tears or complaining that they put under so much pressure from the teachers that I had to report that one back, because I work with these students online, that I had to report back and said, look, you know, what's going on here? And it all came down to the way the teachers had been briefed, and they all took it on themselves to forgive the expression, to put the fear of God into the students, particularly those who were not overly confident about the exams, and they went to panic stations basically, and it was very difficult. And the teachers were told to rebrief the students accordingly. Thank goodness. But it was one of those situations. If one student had come to me and said, you know, this is the problem, I perhaps would have said, well, okay, you know, let's work through it. But when three do, you begin to look for the common denominator.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, if we're working in those environments, if we have a number of students from a particular school, we can actually sort of spot those things, perhaps because we're not at the coalface, we're slightly remote, we're hearing it from somebody else who is happy to talk confidentially. I mean, obviously, I talked to my students and said, look, I'm going to take this back to the school. I hope you don't mind. I won't mention your name. But they were absolutely delighted. And things changed. But it's one of those times when we can actually help. Not just the students, but we can help everybody else as well. But I think prevention is hugely important. There is another area that I wish to bring up about, you know, the benefit of exams, and that is developing resilience. Now, resilience was my word of the year last year, but it might as well be my word of the decade, quite honestly, because I think there are so many young adults who have not realized quite how resilient they can be, because they haven't learned to transfer a resilient situation, you know, how they were resilient in one situation into another. So therefore, an exam, whether it is done under sort of Victorian examination conditions, is actually perhaps a learning process of learning how resilient you can be. But are they debriefed on that? Perhaps schools should actually say to them after they've taken their exams, once they've got their results, hopefully, well done for what you have done. You have been through a very stressful process and you have succeeded in getting through that process. I don't know. How many schools do that? What's your take on that one, Claire?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I do with the teams that I coach. And, you know, reflection is a really important part of the process. In fact, I just left a message for one of the students today who was getting her results. And, you know, what we'll do in the next session is just to reflect on how they went, just from a perspective of, well, what surprised you? What did you do well? What did you do differently? What did you forget to do? Or what might you do differently next time? Just to have some observations about that and some reflections, sort of taking out the, you know, some of that emotion about it and just taking a little bit of a further step back, looking at it from more of a bird's eye perspective and thinking, oh yeah, well actually, you know, you know, where have you sort of been kidding yourself as well, you know, like where have you thought you've revised, but actually you didn't really do it, you know, you went out with your friend to the park. So it's about just being honest with yourself when you're doing that kind of reflection and acknowledgement for that resilience, for getting through it. So I think those two things are really important. The acknowledgement for whatever they want to be acknowledged for. It might be resilience. It might be for sticking to the revision timetable. It might be for actually going to all the exams. I mean, some students are so nervous that the fact that they might get into school, sit down and write their name on a piece of paper is already massive if they've been, you know, sick in the kitchen for the last week before they go to school. So it's different for everybody, right? But it's about acknowledging how they've shown up for themselves, which I think is the key.
Yeah, I'd just like to take you up on that last point. And I had a very interesting situation where I was coaching a year 13 student who, so age 17, 18, who was so totally stressed out, or had been throughout the previous year, that when it came round to undertaking the mock exams, which were done over a 2-week period, when I met her afterwards, she was absolutely delighted. And I said, well, you know, how well do you think you did? She said, it's not that at all. I've just done a 2-week exam period without being sent home for stress.
Exactly.
And that gave her the confidence to go into her real exams 3 months later, knowing that she could actually do the exams. And I mean, the result was that she got into her university of choice. She got more than her potential grades, which was, and certainly more than her predicted grades, just because we've managed to get over that hump of actually being able to go through an exam period without having to go home due to stress.
Exactly. Like even getting in the car and taking the journey to school. Like even if you've got to school, but you've got to go home again, like small steps. Sometimes these kids are just so distraught. Like we've got no idea really what's going on in their homes and what kind of support they're getting from their families and what they're under, you know, and what it takes some kids to even just get into school, you know. So I think it is about really understanding the context that these young people are operating in and, you know, talking through that with them and then acknowledging them for these small wins.
Absolutely. And Reece, thanks very much for your comments, and also Denise. That's very kind of you. Prevention better than cure. Yes. You know, could we actually get these life skills being taught to children right from the word go, so that we can build up? Or, you know, or is it, do they, you know, are they given these life skills? Are they given the communication skills, the resilience skills, and things like that? You know, from age 4, 5 upwards, whose responsibility is it? Is it the parents? Is it the schools? I can see where it's going to be if it ever comes in, because a lot of parents just, they've not realized their requirement to generate these life skills. In fact, do they know how to?
Have they got them themselves? It depends on different
I wasn't
cultures.
going to say that, but yes.
It does depend on different cultures. I mean, it depends
does.
on different cultures, different nationalities, different ethics, different family values. you know, there's so much here. I mean, if you take some families who are in the UK, third generation benefit families, they haven't, I don't mean to be rude, but they haven't necessarily got the skills to be teaching their children. They're teaching their children how to survive in a different way,
True.
right?
Yes.
So this conversation is very difficult to have because by the mere fact that we're having it, we're already at a certain level of awareness to have the conversation, right? But if you're talking about 4 and 5-year-olds learning life skills, you know, you've got to look at these adverse childhood experiences. I mean, I actually went all the way back to pregnancy. I used to be a pregnancy coach, and I wrote a
Oh,
book,
yeah.
How to Have a Positive and Empowering Pregnancy, because that's actually where this conscious parenting starts, right? In utero. And I was involved in the Houses of Parliament because they did these, the 1001 Critical Days Initiative from conception to age 2 is actually where what you're talking about could start. If the parents are given the support, the education to become aware themselves of breaking the old paradigms and patterns that they've grown up with. So it's quite a difficult conversation, what you've just thrown out there for another day.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And a lot of it is perhaps about coaching the parents and
yeah.
coaching by proxy. If by coaching the parents, you can then transfer that coaching onto the children. And I'm just going to thank you very much for your comment. I'm just going to come back to something that you said several sessions ago, which is that we have lost the village.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important, that we've lost the sort of the community spirit, where people within the village, whether it be a genuine village or whether it be just a sort of a community group, where we haven't got the experiences of the elders and things like that to impart the knowledge to the youngsters, not just with the parents, but with others taking part as well. And I think that's one of the difficulties that we have these days. It's the way we live. I'm not sure quite how we can bring it back, but it is actually incredibly important.
I
And
think it's exactly that, because it would be that grandparent role where those people would have more time to spend with children, to chat to children, to really listen to the children, and then the parents were then freed up to go out and do the work and build their careers and bring in the money and support the rest of the family. But the children were growing up with the values and the communication skills and the life skills that were being taught then by the elders. And I think that is really a key part, certainly in my family, in my society, that is missing. You know, and I think that it's a shame because we're all going to live for longer as well. So us as grandparents, when we step into that role, like we'll be doing it for longer, you know. So we need to use these people, right, and use all this knowledge and this wealth of wisdom, and acknowledge that we've got something to bring to society. You know, anybody who's over 50 or 60, you know, we've got things that we can share and that young people can benefit from, and that needs to be respected again, you know.
I think you're very, very right there, Reese. Again, thank you very much indeed for your comments. I feel we are raising lazy learners. Hannah, thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm going to have to call this to a halt very shortly. And so thank you so much indeed for all of those who have inputted, whether it's been verbal or whether it's through the chat. It's absolutely hugely gratefully received. I'm just going to leave you with one technique which I use. In fact, I use it for myself. While it's in a program that we provide for 5-6-year-olds, I still don't use it myself. I'm sure we all know of Superman, of Superwoman, of Supercat, or whatever. It really doesn't matter, but they're all the same. And we can envisage the pose where Superman or Superwoman is standing there, shoulders back, chest out, hands on hips, feet apart, and just focusing ahead. For 20 seconds, just steady breathing, just focusing ahead. It's amazing how confident it makes you feel.
Wow. Yeah, because I work
Try
with
it. Try it. If you've never tried it, try it, because I use it going into presentations and things like that. But kids can use it going into exams. It doesn't matter what their peers think about what they're doing. They could do it, out of the way. It really doesn't matter. But it's about getting that mindset of saying, right, I'm ready to go.
Game
I
changer.
think that it's so simple, yet it can be so effective. Okay, well, thank you so much indeed, everybody. Amanda, thank you. You've just basically said exactly what I want to say. It's been fascinating hearing the different perspectives. And that is the wonderful thing about the coaching support group. We have people from different countries. We have people from different walks of life and things like that. They don't have to be coaches. They can be parents. Anybody who is supporting adolescents and children are most welcome. It's a free service, and I love to listen to other people, and I try not to speak too much myself. I'm sorry if I have overdone it this time. Next time, we are going to be discussing communication. And a little surprise, I thoroughly enjoy banter, and that is a dangerous area. So I thought we could discuss that, because perhaps we can help people to and students to understand what is banter, what is bullying, what is flirting, what is all of these things. How can one match the other? Let's sort of open it up and understand from each other what we can in order to help the kids, because I think sometimes communication is so stifled because of the rules and regulations which seem to be imposed. So it becomes quite a technique to learn to communicate properly. So let's look at that. That'll be Wednesday, March the 12th. And I look forward to you all. And if you know of anybody else who might be interested in coming along, invite them along, please. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.